Advisory Committee, number 11. So, for those of you who may not have met me yet, my name is Michael Weinberger. I'm going to be your facilitator as a part of this effort for the preliminary design. And recently, last month, we unveiled our public involvement plan for the preliminary design and the CAC program plan. They were drafts that everyone got to review, and we had a live survey after the meeting we had in April to make sure that it was reflective of your needs. So we're really happy to have you here tonight. There's a lot of great activities that we're going to be doing. The 2 other meetings that we've held have been extremely involved. People have been rolling their sleeves up and getting their hands dirty. And so I don't want to take too much time away from the actual content, but Joanna Conklin's going to give an update on the project, and then I'm going to do some housekeeping. We're going to move into just reviewing the update to the CAC program plan, and then we're going to talk about your homework. So that's up. Thanks, Joanna.
All right, so for anybody who might not know me, Joanna Conklin, I work with Montgomery County Department of Transportation in the Director's Office, and I lead the county's bus rapid transit program. I just wanted to give a few quick updates based on what's come out of our county council budget sessions over the last month or 2. And really 3 things I just wanted to highlight with respect to this corridor and this project. So the first is that the funding for the project has been programmed. It was unanimously approved by county council a week or 2 ago. And so what that means is all the money is now in the budget for the project, which allows us to go forward with our grant with the Federal Transit Administration. And what they have done is appropriated the money for the design. So appropriation is what basically gives us the authority to spend. So we can only spend money that's been appropriated, not everything that's in the budget necessarily. So we'll be moving forward with the design over the next year with your help. So we're very happy about that. The second thing that came up in council is that one of the members of our South CAC group on this corridor has come up with an idea to potentially do a reversible bus lane through the center of the corridor, 1 to 2 lanes depending on what would fit, with the potential concept of could it fit within the existing curbs or the existing right-of-way. So this is an idea that really, we did kind of studied variations of it under the state study, but the council has asked us to go back and take another look at it and come back.
This is the Emerson study?
This is the Emerson proposal, right, Sean Emerson's proposal. So what they've asked is that we come back in the fall with a supplemental budget request, so that's like a request for a new study that would allow us to then look at Sean's idea and then potentially some other operational improvements to the roadway as well. It could be that we look again at the HOV lanes and take a deeper dive into that. There's perhaps some intersection spot improvements, other things that might be able to be done to improve the roadway both for transit and for cars and pedestrians and all modes. So we'll be coming, my department will be coming back in a few months to council with that budget request. And the third thing, those were things that happened on the capital side of the budget. On the operating side of the budget, County Council approved funding for a new ride-on service that will start in January. It's a ride-on limited stop service similar to what Metro provides in the Metro Extra service, only it'll be provided by the county instead of Metro. And it'll be a peak-only service that will start in January of 2018, and it's sort of a way to get something on the street quicker until we'll be able to do the BRT in 2020. So the vision is that it would come online in January and then kind of run until the BRT opens, sort of as a filler service. But I'm sorry?
With the amenities, like Wi-Fi and stuff?
Actually, I don't know. No.
No?
So it'll just be, it'll just basically be service. So it'll be what you see with the regular bus service. But limited stops, which is one amenity, so to speak, and that it won't stop as much as your regular bus. So those are the 3 updates. Are there any questions on those? Or yes.
Has the state actually changed their lane width requirements, or are they just thinking about it?
There has been no commitment at this point from the state to change their lane width requirements. They have expressed to us a willingness to look at options, in terms of the lane widths. In the southern portion of the corridor, I believe the lanes are already like, 10 feet, 11 feet, so I'm not sure you could get much, on that side, but further up perhaps, I mean, that's something. So one of the big things, and when we study the Emerson proposal, is coordination with the state. I mean, it's not something that we can do in a vacuum. We will absolutely have to talk to State Highway Administration and have an understanding of, first, what type of analysis that they're going to require us to do, to be comfortable with anything we might recommend, and then, how far will they go in terms of letting us do some of these things on their roadway, so.
The other comment is, I thought that the DOT testimony on the 18th was just outstanding.
Thank you.
Yes. Should do more of that, actually.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Take every opportunity.
Great, thanks. Yes, sir.
Is that a fixed date, January 1st, 2018? And that's Columbia, isn't it?
That's what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Is bus service to provide service before the BRT comes online? You said January.
It's January, I'm not
1st.
sure
Is that
if it's
certain, or is that an approximate time?
That certainly will happen in January 2018. The date will probably be the middle of the month. It's from Burtonsville to Silver Spring, not Columbia.
Right, but it's a good point you bring about Columbia. Howard County is moving forward with this, so they have funds from the state to do their own study of bus rapid transit on their side of the line, and so in general, the state has been pushing these types of BRT studies onto the local jurisdictions. It's not just in Montgomery County, but it's happening in Howard County, Anne Arundel County, other local jurisdictions. They sort of have expressed a desire for us to do the studies rather than them. So in the case of Howard County, there's some funding in the state's budget for the study, and they're giving that to Howard County so that they can do their study of what they might be able to do on the northern portion of the line in terms of BRT.
Is there any formal coordination between Montgomery and Howard?
Yes. Yes, we've been speaking with them on a regular basis. We're in the process of maybe developing like an agreement between the two counties, and we'd love to have the state involved in that as well if we could. The work that our architects have been doing on station design, Howard County planners have been involved in that, so they've been coming to our stakeholder meetings. So we're really trying to coordinate closely on the planning and design work.
And I'll add to what Rob and Dan said. I thought you handled the editorial comments that came from the DAS very well. There was some interesting stuff.
Yeah, it was. There always is. It's always fun.
I thought it was a good move for you to kick off and say all these misconceptions floating around. That was a good move to do it that way.
Yeah, that's been a lot, and we just want to make sure that that there's no misinformation going around, and that the truth is out there. So.
And I think
way
that,
too much misinformation around.
I think that the truth is that one aspect that's very interesting that's come out of this is that we're a mega region, and there's a lot of jurisdictions that provide services that overlap and coordinate, and so there is a difficulty in understanding the distinction between the brands of local bus service and where they traverse and why they traverse where they traverse. So I think that as we think about this new service, it's going to have its own brand, but it's going to function within the regional transportation network. And so these concepts that are being introduced as a part of this effort are not novel to the industry, and they're not novel to this region. They're just being implemented in a way that's part of the planning process that is a little more intentional and far more collaborative. And I think the fact that everyone here is getting to participate in that process shows you that we want everyone to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that will make this process move more smoothly, and it will not only support the effort to support the design, but as I've noted before, we'll continue to adjust and update the public involvement effort through the type of pieces we need where there may be misconceptions. So public education is a part of the Get On Board BRT campaign. And so the better people understand what this is and what this isn't is really critical. And so I think we're going to be talking about that a lot today.
When we talk about, first of all, thank you for having me. When you talk about Howard County coming in, so there's the White Oak Science Gateway as the transportation management district that's going to be set up to try to come up with programs to address the traffic in that area.
Right.
To the degree that a lot of the traffic in the area was ultimately coming from Howard. Can you sort of keep an open mind or help us coordinate in the Science Gateway District has said that some of the things that we might do with funds or incentives in the district might be to offer things up to Howard.
Right.
Because trips that start in Howard don't end up in cars down. So
Right.
can DOT sort of be broad enough, or how do we make sure that the things that we talk about for the TMD would be inclusive of whatever this line might ultimately be, not just within Montgomery County,
Right.
but broader?
I think, and it sounds like you're talking broader than the BRT even, right? So.
I mean, I would be broader than
Yeah.
BRT, but BRT alone, so, you know, if it was to encourage bus passes or something, or some of
Right.
the things that, as buildings and projects that we're coming up with, those might be elements of our own TMD.
Right, so I think, so we'll definitely give an eye to that in this project. Also, you know, the TMDs typically have advisory committees, right? Has the one been formed for White Oak? Has been.
Well, it's been formed, but not active.
It's not active yet, so clearly when that becomes active, I think that's probably the primary way I would think to try to, you know, make sure that Howard County piece is
And is
incorporated.
DOT part of, I don't know, you know.
Of the TMD?
I know it's part of,
Yes.
yeah.
It's
We
the
must run
master
it
plan
visually.
area
Yeah.
only.
It's in management department.
It's only the master plan area.
I know, but, well, it's in the master plan area is where the district is, but,
Right.
but the trips that we're trying to
I
mitigate
understand.
through the
Yeah.
district, this might be the best way to take the trips off the district.
It's certainly one way.
Well, in terms of the purview of the project, I think, you know, we're focusing on the alignment that's been established, but these kinds of updates will certainly be maintained. That's why we do updates at the start of this, so knowing that that's of interest to this group is certainly critical. And, you know, the RTAs and discussions, as we noted, the Howard County Department of Planning is in discussion. As we noted in our 5th meeting, if there is an interest for a meeting to bring in new topics, you know, you can continue to reach out to us to request them, and if that makes sense for the 5th meeting.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, I don't know how far along Howard County will be by the time we get to our 5th meeting for this, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's the number of it though is we're at 11, so it would be.
Well, whatever the number,
Yeah.
15, yes, 15,
Yeah, it'd be
number
15,
15.
but it's the 5th one in this
Right.
plan, so I
Perhaps
apologize.
if-
Thanks for clarifying.
Right, so perhaps if they have at least started the work, we could always ask some of their staff to come in and give us an update, you know, if you all are interested in that, on how they're approaching their studies.
I just thought of something in conjunction what we were just discussing. Once the ride-on starts, or BRT starts, we already have a little, let's say, an unnoticed interface with some of the people in Howard County. The state MTA buses,
Right.
many of them
Mhm.
stop at Burtonsville, and they stop at the same place.
Yes.
And that would provide at least one way of people from Howard County, because right now, the MTA buses stop at Burtonsville, the next stop is Silver Spring. But with the BRT, they can go to a bunch of other places
Right.
in Howard County, such as White Oak.
So in terms of, welcome to those who are joining, we'll just get everyone set up.
I can move.
Yeah, we can move.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, let's do that.
And just
Aren't you
remember
guys-
those-
If you put it here, just
Yeah.
move that up there, you say this in the middle too.
Yeah, 2 more, so
Two more.
you guys should move.
You don't have to. Listen,
You
you
got
just
it?
move it to the end.
That'll work, yep. Okay, sorry, y'all.
We'll
There you go to move.
So I'll move into this.
Okay, yes, let's move on. Yep.
Just watch the cords and hold it.
Yes, thanks, guys.
Just move it. You could position the project.
Okay, yeah, so we're gonna proceed with the agenda, just because we have a lot to cover and I don't want to lose time on the activity, but at the end of the meeting, we're gonna take comments, and I'll note, for each of the sections that are coming up, if we do run out of time for that section, all of the staff who are subject matter experts will be here after 8:30, and they'll be happy to stay as late as you need to answer questions and to discuss things, but we're gonna continue to move through the agenda. All right, so I'm going to run through 2 housekeeping items before we do introductions, and then we're going to proceed into activities. Those of you who have your packets in front of you, and hopefully all of you have your binders and information, within that packet you have an update to the public involvement plan. So that fed into the feedback we received as a part of our discussion in April. So for example, one of the comments we received in terms of our outreach strategy was to include Rotaries. That was a group that we were not hitting. So we looked into where we could add organizations to ensure that this summer when we're doing our digital survey and print survey, as well as our employer focus groups, that they were more targeted and that we'd have a broader scope. In addition, the CAC program plan was updated, and behind that document is a public outreach memo. We reviewed last month the activities and the results of the activities at the open house in the meeting last month, but this memo just provides a greater level of detail. It shows how both the service planning, the local bus service planning activity, and the station activity, what data will be used as a part of our process. So it just shows you how every comment we get, any feedback we get, whether it's the meeting minutes here or people engaging in the activities at events, all of that helps us shape our process, and some of the other staff will be talking about that tonight. In addition, did anyone not receive a CAC packet in the mail, just by raising your hand? For CAC members. So CAC members receive packets in the mail. We're happy to give you a packet if you do not receive one, if you're just joining us.
So everybody got one? Excellent. Okay.
Excellent, that's great. Great, so that means our
Mail
records.
service works.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't on some of
And
the
our
other
records.
committees, a lot of people did,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
happy that.
Okay, so these packets are to help support the activities we'll be doing. So just so everyone's on the same page, not everyone's met each other, I'm going to start with an introduction of the county staff that's here, including MCDOT and Ride-On staff. Then we're going to do introductions of the Arcane Cake engineering team, the ZGF architecture team, and the Forestburg ITP planning team. And then we're going to do CAC introductions and go into our activities. So Joanna,
Okay.
and we'll proceed with you.
Joanna Conklin with Montgomery County Department of Transportation, Bus Rapid Transit Development Manager.
Brian Downey with BF Soul Centers, representing the property owner in the on the 29 corridor.
Eric Lewowski at North White Oak Community Association. I'm sure I botched that.
Shane Pohl, Director of Development of the Duffy Companies, manager of the Hillendale Shopping Center, and some properties.
Matt Koch, member at large, recent retiree. Sorry.
Bernie Carnes, I'm with Calverton.
Dan Wellham with Greater Colesville Citizens Association.
Sardinia, representing East County Citizens Advisory Board.
Pete Miokin, Tamarack Triangle Civic Association, Fairland, Colesville area also.
Rob Richardson, MapQuest Partnership.
Should we going back around or? Okay. Carol Ann Barth, I'm representing the Montgomery County Civic Federation's Transportation Committee.
I'm Jim Zepp. I live in the Northwood Four Corners neighborhood community. I also happen to be the president of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. Actually, I'm one member of the Central 29 committee. Couldn't make that meeting last night.
Thanks for coming back. So we'll just continue with some of our team here.
Chris Soma with ZGF, the design team, architects.
Allison Burkheimer with Arcane Cake, the engineering team.
Josh Diamond, I'm from Forestburg ITP, the project manager for our side of things and leading the service development for the local routes, Pomona and Ryan.
Rebecca Martin with Foursquare, I'm taking meeting minutes, so please speak up.
Otter County with ZGF Architects. We're actually the consultant for the MWCOG grant, which was to design the prototype station, and now we're on the US 2019 with Arcane Cave to implement the prototype design.
Tom Poe with MCDOT. I'm supporting Joanna and the BRT team.
I'm Darcy Buckley with MCDOT. I'm also a member of the BRT team.
So we have to stand up.
You do.
Okay, I'm Bruce Johnston. I'm the manager of the Division of Transportation Engineering for Montgomery County DOT.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Yeah.
I'm Dan Hibber of the Division Chief for Ride-On.
I'm Jeffrey Land, guest.
Thanks for coming.
Joruk Pandey, Montgomery County Government, Regional Director for East County.
Rafael Olarte, Montgomery County DOT. I assist Joanna in the different aspects of the BRT project.
And lastly, I'm Rick Kegel with RK&K. I'm the overall project manager for the US 29 BRT study.
Great. So one last piece of housekeeping that I just wanted to note. So in on the website, you have a wealth of information regarding each of your CACs. There was a change that was made from last month to this month. The Southern group had 40 members, and we did the digital voting activity just as we had done with this group. And when we looked at the zip codes, there was a sentiment that those in the Four Corners would benefit from having a third meeting, both due to the close proximity to their homes, as well as the fact that there were individuals who felt as if it would be conducive to having smaller conversations so that they could cover geographic topics and make sure that concerns and issues that were relevant to their neighborhood in the county were reflected. So we now have South and Central meetings. So those will continue to be scheduled month to month. They're represented in the updated CAC program plan. Members are always welcome to change the location that they attend. So central members who feel as if it would benefit them to be a member of the Southern group can let us know. And so just for you noting on the website, there's now the central group. That's where that originated. Also, there is a set of CAC project team expectations. The document that was developed in 2014 that kind of guides the role of participation in the group is the Montgomery County Rapid Transit System Corridor Advisory Committee's planning outline and structure selection procedure. And so I wanted to kind of build on that just to help maintain, clear lines of communication and better set expectations, not just of your participation in the meeting, but also our participation and our responsibility to you. So in that section, I just wanted to highlight the note that the CACs are advisory committees. They're not decision makers. And that doesn't mean you don't participate in the decision-making process. It just means that you're advising the county as a representative of the overall public outreach effort. So this is a valuable role to make sure the public is included as a part of the planning process for BRT. The feedback we receive at the meetings is taken extremely seriously. And the program recommendations that we develop should represent the concerns of all local communities. And so what that means is that CAC members have been chosen by their communities that they represent. An important part of their job is to be a liaison to the project team from their communities. But although we know you represent your communities, it's important to make a distinction between your individual point of view and the constituency that you serve. And so that's to say that if there's, let's say, an issue or concern that affects a civic association or an organization you work with, we're happy to come join you at a meeting and do a community update. You can put us on the agenda. Joanna and I have been working with Rick and going around the county, and if we have a meeting that we've been requested to attend, we're happy to present. We went to the East County Collective last month. We had a fantastic meeting with that group. And if there's an individual issue or there's a community that would like to talk about, a concept that is a part of Get On Board BRT, we're happy to do a standalone community meeting and promote it so we can bring in a larger constituency group. Also in the summer when we're distributing survey information materials, we want to make sure that that's posted on social media and online and through listservs so we can make sure that although you represent these communities, we're hoping and happy that you are going to be making sure that everyone's represented as a part of the process. So, I just wanted to note that before I turned it over to Rick to discuss station design. But if you have any questions or have more ideas regarding the CAC program, feel free to talk to me.
Good.
I'm sorry, I don't know if it's Michael or Mike or what you prefer. Would you please give us a list of all of the dramatis personae now? Because we have, at this point, more consultants and staff than we have people on the committee. And I think it would be helpful, rather than us going up and tackling each one for business cards, to just give us a list, and then we can kind of keep it all straight, just something simple like we had going around. who they are, who they work for, and what their job
I think it's a great point. You know, you're actually, I'm not gonna say that it's a great question, but it's not the first time we've heard this. We're gonna have meeting minutes that are gonna include everyone's name and information email. So we're happy to both provide that in the minutes that will be available online, but also to send that out to the members through our contact site. That will be
Yeah, Michael, North 29th sort of concentrates everything north of Stewart Lane,
New Hampshire,
White Oak area. Central, are there any demarcations as to what the south is going to cover, the central is going to cover, and north is going to, we look at it as a whole stretch. You have to look at it from its entirety. But based on the booklets that you gave us and the areas you wanted us to concentrate on, I assume that's geared towards the group that you're in. Therefore, if you could give us an idea of the areas that the central committee is going to concentrate on, the southern committee is going to concentrate on, and it gives us a good idea of what everybody's working on.
I mean, I think that Rick will actually be able to give an insight to that because he developed the activities and so he determined the parameters. But what I will say is that this, again, is not a hard and fast rule around zip codes or there's a specific demarcation. I will say that there's considerable interest by those in Four Corners to have their point of view represented and to focus on the implementation of bus passenger amenity infrastructure as well as its effects on local service planning. So that was the majority of comments we received at our central meeting, and it allows us to make sure that those who have those questions and comments get to have that time, and those who are in Silver Spring at the Civic Center who are talking more in regard to the issues at the Transit Center and downtown. So that's really in part what's in about that.
But you know, we look at it as an entirety, so what happens in Four Corners impacts us up here, and so on and so forth. So I think we just have to be careful that we don't.
So may I add, before you answer, probably may I add to it?
Sorry, I want to make sure that Joanna's going to respond.
So I just wanted to respond in terms of how it was broken up, just from a pure logistical point of view. We were looking to have fairly, so we have about 60 members total in the 3 groups, and so we said, oh, wouldn't it be great if we have about 20, 20, 20, just from a numbers perspective. When we looked at where, we actually mapped where everybody lives or the organizations that they represent, and if we split it at the Beltway, because if we had like Silver Spring to the Beltway, that was about 20, Beltway to New Hampshire was about 20, New Hampshire North. So just from a purely logistical, I just want to understand. We have some people who did ask us, they said, you know, I live in Four Corners, but I would actually prefer to be on the south, and we accommodated that. So it's not hard and fast.
So what I'll also say, and I want to take questions, I'm sorry, is that, you know, CAC members should be talking to each other between the groups, and we should all be working as a team to better understand what's happening. So I hope that when people are participating who sit on other committees when they're coming, you know, they're getting to ask, you know, at the end we open it up to everyone. But in general, I mean, we see this as one quarter in its entirety, but I appreciate you noting your concern.
I was just about to suggest, since this is just one project, at one point, if you bring all this group, once in 6 months or 4 months together, it would be a good idea to know each other, to appreciate, you know, what issues are being emphasized on one group.
I really like that idea.
Yeah.
Well, the state had told us they wouldn't do that.
So,
because we had already asked.
So there are a couple different ways we can go about it. I think it would be best if, you know, some of it will be suggested again as part of this 5th meeting, but there's other ways to do it throughout, so we'll talk offline a little bit about that. One idea I had was that maybe we would have representatives from different groups present to one another, and that maybe in talking about what happens in your community and how even impacts in other parts of the corridor affect your community, it would allow for some great interfacing, but we haven't planned that all out because we just split the groups, so we're trying to see, we want to see how these meetings went, and they've been very successful in terms of people really getting to present and talk and listen to each other, so maybe there'll be more opportunity for collaboration.
Yeah, managing 60 people is
Yes, Jim, I'll get to you in just 1 second. If I can just follow up on this. You're going to need it, I promise. As you just pointed out, 60 people in one room is contrary to what we would like to start making this now. and I apologize, I sort of jumped in before
No,
you.
you should, because it's your time. I mean,
Yes,
we're about
it
to get
is.
into the activity, so feel free to
So,
roll right
the
into
one
it.
thing I want to point out before we get into the station sighting exercises is, if you notice the room, the intention here is to have sort of a roll-up-your-sleeve conversation across the table with me. I'm going to try to guide the conversation, but I really want to hear from everyone, hear what your thoughts are with respect to everything related to the siting, related to the other BRT networks. I know Dan and Peter have some ideas on those. But again, the idea is to make it a much more intimate group to where we can hear everybody's opinion. I think whoever said it, I apologize already. Bringing the groups together is important, but when that happens, we end up in an auditorium-style setting. And I think that we found in the last couple nights that a small, intimate setting like this proves to be much more effective in terms of hearing everyone's opinions and sharing what we know about the project with you. So, Jim, let me come to you, and then I'll get into my stuff.
Well, I have two clarifications I need. One is that I wanted to know what is Get On Board as an organization? Is it an arm of county DOT? Is it a private entity? I don't know if you're familiar with internet domain nomenclature, but there's getonboardbrt.com, which implies a commercial business entity. If it was a nonprofit, it would be .org. If it was a government agency, it would be .gov. So what is Get On Board?
Yeah, I can answer. It's our education campaign that the county has for the bus rapid transit. It's been in place for maybe almost a year now. Yeah. That's all it is, just our education.
So it is an arm of DOT?
It's not an arm of DOT, it's a program under the bus rapid transit program.
It's essentially, you know, we have public education having a brand that is associated with it really is mainly just to provide continuity for the development materials. And so, for example, you know, various transit agencies develop campaigns around resource information around smart cards, like for students. And so they'll brand it with a name, and it'll have a logo, and it'll have a color scheme. And so there's the overarching Get On Board BRT program, which is really to help people understand what bus rapid transit is, because there are those that are not familiar. And it's been really a support to create that continuity.
But who do you speak for? When you say something, is that county government speaking, or is
it is a county program, correct?
So it is, okay, when you,
yes.
This is considered produced by the county government?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just not clear with this, because there have been entities running around with documents that appear to be from the county government, aren't from the county government.
I mean, it has the NCDOT logo, it has the county seal.
Right.
It's just noting this as a campaign because in doing this type of program, the state was running it, had its own logo, so they designed that logo, and when you saw that logo, you recognized the people who were participating in the CAC at that time, that was the color scheme and the nomenclature and name for that program, which was US 29. What was it was called? Bus Rapid Transit. So this is just an umbrella, and it's like what there's programs. DC.
So this could be getonboard.gov.
I'm sorry, can we move on to, do you have another question?
I'm just trying,
I think
yes.
people really want to get to the activity, and I don't want to get caught up on things that are really not part of what our agenda is
Yeah, we
today.
can talk about it.
If you have another question that's relevant to the
Yes,
activity today, then please feel free to ask
The
it.
project map that's online and being distributed, I notice along the corridor is the Greenbelt metro station and the green yellow lines. So what does which of the CACs represents Greenbelt and the green yellow lines of the metro?
So that just shows that the metro connects to, it's just showing a connection to the purple line, which ultimately connects to the US 29 BRT. There is no corridor advisory committee that represents Greenbelt. Okay, let's move on. Okay.
So this is the project area, we're not.
So we can describe it a little more in detail, and we're going to be talking about stations. So why don't we have Rick walk through the activity. Thank you for your question.
Well, obviously, it's the geographic extent of any discussions that have CACs, and also the consideration in terms of any planning data that's going to be relevant to this. Why is it showing Prince George's County?
Okay.
Okay, so what we want to do tonight is have a discussion regarding the two areas that we as a team identified that we thought you would be most interested in and are, of the ones in the north area, the most complex. So we, as you noted, the book has those two exercises, but we knew you'd all have an interest in all of the stations, so we actually included the maps, as you saw, of all 11 locations. And so I know.
Confused with the geographic coverage for this project?
I'm sorry?
You're confused about the geographic coverage for this project?
No. Excuse me. We're gonna maintain the fact that right now we're conducting a presentation. We're gonna have an opportunity to participate in the activity. I think we just need to do the introductions and walk through, and if we could just
I think one of the basic things is just what is the geographic area.
I understand. I would like to.
The US,
don't know that.
It's the US 29 corridor from Burtonsville to Silver Spring.
Right, I agree that, but the map is showing.
That is a regional area map showing the overall region. The corridor is defined from Burtonsville to Silver Spring as shown on that map.
Okay.
Okay, so by show of hands, how many people were able to make it out to the two exercise areas and take a look at both White Oak and Brick Shady, which is of course right outside our door? By show of hands, who was able to get out there and take a look around? All right. All right. Well, I appreciate those who did. Those who didn't, hold out your hands. You're going to get slapped. I'm just kidding. Maybe if I had a ruler, I'd slap your hands for that. But, okay, so we're going to. I think it's very important that you're familiar with those areas, that you understand what's out there today as opposed to what you remember from 6 months ago, the last time you were there. I will tell you that as we go through our exercise, Allison is going to run our little show here. We've got Google Maps on view, and we're going to be able to go to Street View. So we'll be able to see very close. If you want to look at one specific curve or one specific bench or anything in that service area, we can zoom in and take a look at that for you. It's worked out very well for us on the past nights, and so I think it's going to be very effective for us. You also received, in the package you got in the mail, the amenities package. We provided that to you both to give you a sense of what these stations could look and feel like, how they could be small, how they can grow. And we want to have a discussion tonight about what we think is the most appropriate station in the family of stations for each of these locations. Otto Condon is going to step up here in just a minute and go through some slides on the amenities, but it's going to be very good background as we have the discussions on the stations. So I'll probably end up referring back to some of his slides as we go through that discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to Otto right now, and then I'll come right back to you.
Good evening. You may recognize me. I think I saw a few of you in the open houses. And that occurred. So tonight, just want to talk a little bit about what have been the design goals in terms of the CAUG grant and in terms of for a station. Talk about some best practices, then to get into what really is the program or what are the requirements for a good station. We also heard some interesting things at the previous community meetings, and then want to describe, as Rick mentioned, the station family. And I think, in a nutshell, before you start that exercise, there's two things that this presentation is intended to really discuss. One was, the get on board. That's about identity. BRT needs a really good identity for it to be successful for riders, and then also so people have a good understanding of what is the scale of these stations, so that you're not coming to the table thinking that it's going to be a large amount of station. It's a BRT station is a totally different animal, and so that's really what I'm want to present tonight. So next, and the BRT station, like any good transit, basically has to do a few things. It has to provide weather protection, both from from overhead, also from the sides. You want to have good information, and you also want to have some seating. It's pretty simple. In terms of the goals, going to the identity issue, it needs to be easy to find and use. It needs to be accessible. It needs to be safe. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to want to ride the transit. Part of the charge given for the CAUG grant and also for 29 is it is going through, it is one corridor, but it's going through unique contexts. So the station needs to basically fit and adapt to the physical context and also to the capacity of the potential ridership at each station. And Montgomery County wants this to be a good investment, so it needs to be maintainable. Because if it's not maintainable, it's going to be an eyesore, and people will not use it. So it needs to have a good life cycle investment. So these images were, actually we had them at the open house, and they start to get into the scale, or some of the critical elements of the best practice. And as these images really show, the architectural character can be pretty much anything in terms of the, what it's trying to express. In terms of the scale, they can be rather small, they can be significantly large. Curitiba, which was the first one, really the first BRT in the world, the late 1980s, early 90s, they decided to create a self-contained tube so that they could actually control off-board fare collection and provide, they couldn't actually afford a subway, so they built a very prominent BRT station with dedicated bus lanes. Other systems, Canada uses more enclosed because they're dealing with much harsher winters, and some of the other ones are just, it's a variety of scales. Or actually, Alexandria is the one, Crystal City, which they've made a station which tries to enclose the road to create a better sense of a station for a BRT. Next one. In terms of materials, that's another opportunity to help to reinforce the identity. Some of these images up in, also in Canada, in the Northwest, they really try to incorporate wood to make it feel more of the Northwest. Lighting is something that can be done, it doesn't just have to be functional, it can actually be part of the art approach, it can be part of the architectural approach, and really help to create identity. And public art is something we see that is an opportunity. BRT is, it can be a unifying piece of architecture as a system that, like the metro system in DC, which really connects the region or the corridor. And public art can be the layer that actually helps for the communities to have some ownership and stewardship of the stations themselves. So in transit projects, and several we've done, you can have more customized paving, you can have some customized furniture, you can use the windscreens to actually incorporate public art. And it not only has an aesthetic benefit, it also has a benefit for community ownership, which ultimately does can reduce the need for maintenance because it actually becomes a deterrent on like graffiti and vandalism. So it's really thinking of trying to get a lot of use out of every part of design. So as part of the COG grant and the system that's being planned, and we were actually doing the prototype so it could adapt for all 9 quarters of the BRT master plan. And there's basically 2 functional types of stations. There's the side-loaded station, where this is the bus, you enter on the right side of the bus. You have a platform, you have a shelter. The conditions on this side of the platform may vary. You could have a retail frontage, you could have residential. This could also be in the middle of the road where you have a center running trackway with the platforms. The other option is a center loading platform, which is where you would you actually load on the left side of the buses, and that's where it gets into the requirements for the unique requirements for BRT systems, where you want to use a bus that's low floor, has easy loading, and fast loading right off the platform, and often the systems, so they have flexibility to accommodate both center and side loading platforms. They'll have doors on both the right and the left side of the buses. So this,
before you leave that chart,
sure.
I notice in a lot of the terminology, the people use station and platform to intermingle those two, and you can have multiple platforms for a station, or you could have one. And just like to ask the group to try to tighten up the language so we know which one you're talking about, station, which could have multiple platforms and just one platform.
Sure. Okay, you got it.
Well, now you're doing it fine. but as a general statement, that's the language is he's cleaning up.
It is a common, there's like station stops and platforms, and it can be confusing.
Wow, at certain times I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, so.
Gotcha. So this is the program requirements, and really to identify all the elements that make a good station for the system. And we've broken in, because we wanted to illustrate how it can be adaptable for capacity and also for context. What this, what this shows is, like in the teal and the blue, is really the shelter the architectural elements. And in terms of the keys, so the circle is really more optional. The solid circle is what you really need to do for the platform. And then this shows an opportunity for expanding. And what that means is like a very low capacity platform, you may just have a station marker. When you get the medium capacity, you really need to have all the elements of a station. And when you get to higher capacity, that's where you may add additional, you can ask what a marker is?
No.
You may add additional shelters.
I was going to ask how on the circles on the high capacity, do you define what those additional features might be?
Well, so like in this case, if you have high capacity, depending on with the base, you may add another shelter, another canopy shelter. You may add additional windscreens, you may add additional living row because you're having, it's a 60.
Maybe it would be worthwhile, maybe not now, but somewhere down the road is to have, say, the base, the middle thing, then what might be included in the top ones. I've been struggling with what's the range.
Well, and it does become sort of adaptable to the site, and so we're trying to lay out very, I'll say a loose framework, or a guiding framework. Sure.
How flexible is this?
Excuse me, sorry,
Because
I mean,
I think
I'm sorry, we're not taking comments from people who are not CAC members during the discussion.
Okay.
We're gonna open it up to discussions, and Jim has a question. I'm sorry, I know we wanna make sure everyone will get to ask questions and talk to the project team. It's just it's part of our role.
Well, two questions. The first one is, what's your design budget for the stations? As you may know, the Chicago Loop BRT actually even had an international design competition for their stations. Unfortunately, after they got the winner, the budgets, the cost of the stations ended up being $1 million each when they called that one off.
Yeah.
So there's a certain limit in terms of amenities and costs here, so you can't have that if it gets $1 million a station.
Yeah.
So do you have a design budget?
Well, I will actually address that issue about flexibility and the budget as I go at the end of the presentation. I think it would be more clear than to discuss a number right now. So if you just a little patient with me.
Yes.
Well, I can answer that in terms of, if you recall, at the last meeting, we presented I guess you weren't here, Jim, we presented a project budget, and in that project budget, it broke down a line item for stations, which I believe was $13 million for all of the stations along the line. So that gives you a
total,
a general range. Now they will vary because we're going to have some, like in the Silver Spring Transit Center, we're not going to likely need to do a canopy or anything, and versus out in the park and rides where we may be doing a much larger station with multiple care. So it's not going to be like an even number for each station. It'll vary.
Yeah. So then also just building up on, that's about capacity. Then there's the issue of context. And here we just use pluses and minuses. It's not a value judgment. Again, it's if you're in a suburban residential or maybe more open space, there may be opportunity to add an additional shelter if needed. Where if you're in an urban context, because it's a very narrow sidewalk, there's a lot of adjacent development, maybe you won't be able to add you may have to subtract the shelter, but then you also have all the adjacent developments, so you may not need a shelter. So it's really, we're trying to lay the rules of the roadmap to how you think about adding these amenities. And then the other section, we do have public art, which we think is critical across the board. In terms of communication, you always need to have a map, you need to have info screen and real-time signage, you need to have power. Some policy decisions are things, will Wi-Fi be included at the stations or just on the buses? Is there cell phone charging? Shelters, there's still a discussion about whether they need heat or not. And advertising. Landscape, we're showing optional because it's really, it's really site specific. And I'll get more into it. We think landscape will be an additive feature for the stations, but it will depend on the context.
So my other question related to what are your design requirements for the stations? Well, some of the stuff is kind of optional kinds of things. What must you meet in the stations or provide in the stations? For example, off-board fare payment, collection capability. Well, you pointed out the one the Curitiba Brazil glass tubes that they're noted for, because to have off-board fare collection, you have to then provide a restricted access area, just like Metro does, because you don't want people just hopping on board, fare jumping the turnstiles.
Actually, there's ticket vending, it's off-board fare collection, though it is an honor system which is used around the country, light rail and the BRT. So you can demarcate the platforms, but you do not have to create a physical barrier. And
Some of them actually have a human attendant at each of these stations to enforce that.
some do, and some
And
use
some-
roving police, and
Well, some do have 2 sheriff's deputies whose
Yeah.
sole responsibility is fare collection enforcement.
Okay, so I just want to let you know, we have 5 minutes before we have to get into the activity. We're supposed to have an hour, now we're going to have half an hour for the activity, so a lot of the discussion and questions are good. I want Carolyn to be able to ask her question, but I just want to be mindful. I just want to know that every minute that we get into the weeds here, I just want to make sure that we have time to go through the material, and we are all here.
You're burning up time.
Excuse
All
me.
I'm asking him, they should be able to
I agree. I'm just-
itemize very quickly, what are your design requirements for these stations?
So
That's
Jim,
work
just to
out.
be clear, that is exactly what this diagram shows. So it shows different, some solid and, some open circles. The solid ones are the requirements, the open ones are the optional, and it's exactly what Otto has been walking us through.
But that's what gets to get into my first question about budget. Because how much you're going to spend to meet your absolute requirements for then how much money you've got for.
And it's a good question, Otto noted when he continues through the presentation, he's going to describe that.
but I will, yeah.
Well, now, actually, to be totally honest, I have a correction, because what's your title there for landscaping, having done low-impact development and conservation landscaping for over 20 years, low-impact development is actually not an optional form of landscaping. It is actually a stormwater management requirement in the state of Maryland in order to meet the Chesapeake Bay requirements. Anytime there is stormwater to be managed, you have to use low-impact development to the maximum extent practicable. From your explanation, it sounds like what you meant there was landscaping as an optional amenity, and perhaps you were expressing a preference for conservation landscaping.
Well,
Those are different things.
I will qualify it a little bit. And Rick, you can correct me on this, actually in terms of the platform size, because of the size, there will likely not be a requirement for stormwater management, but I think it's our ethical duty to incorporate landscape and performant landscapes for stormwater management, if there's the opportunity to actually incorporate it. So
It depends on if you're busting up the pavement or not. If you're busting up the pavement, if that does happen, even though it's not going to happen everywhere, then that can trigger the complete streets requirement, in which case, again, it's no longer optional. So, just
well, I think, and
to be
actually,
clear.
Going to the next slide, I think starts to talk about, I think that.
I had a comment on the slide that we were just looking at. I encourage you, give a lot of thought to the ticket vending machines and make sure that the ticket vending machines are simple to use and take smart trip cards and will issue a single trip ticket of some kind. And what you were saying about not having to have present your ticket to the driver, what light rail and BRT does is a lot of them, you just get on the vehicle and every once in a while an inspector comes. That works in many cities. LA did have to end up putting up fare gates. But anyway, I just wanted to say I was in LA, Portland, Seattle recently, and I bought tickets, and some of those machines were not meant for the faint of heart. So I'm just kind of encouraging, make it so you can get either a single trip ticket or add to a smart trip card. Metro's types of machines for that are very good, but have sympathy for the non-transit rider in the hopes that they'll become
that goes back to the goal. If it's not easy to use, you're not going to get riders. And I think that's the the units have to be small and have to be fit and easy to use. So,
Why don't you go on to the family? We're going to run out of time here before we know it.
well, actually,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Back a little bit. No, we'll go back a little bit to the next slide, and I'll just pass, because I think it's, you know, the open houses, we have this question about describing how a design can affect the territory quality of Montgomery County. And this is where we heard a lot about how, you know, the natural environment is really critical. And so, as an architect, I'm standing here saying it shouldn't just be a piece of architecture. I think landscape is as critically important as the landscape marker as the architecture is to really create the identity for the station. And that goes to the question about, well, I think, you know, it's optional spatially, but it's, you know, if we can fit it in, it's really a requirement as part of the overall budget for the station. Next, we were also intrigued by the fact that with all the stone quarries in Montgomery County's history, that perhaps we can actually incorporate some stone into the station so that it feels more grounded as part of Montgomery County, and it's not just a piece of architecture that is plopped down on the stations. In terms of sustainability, you know, energy production is an opportunity. I mean, if we can make these net zero energy platforms, what better way to address life cycle costing is if all your lighting and the fair vending machines can be operated by solar. Landscape, we do think that landscape should be performative, and it should offer the opportunities for stormwater management and also create an aesthetic, higher quality so people can enjoy it while they're sitting on the platforms. So, the family, really quick, and these are it's the cartoon framework of the stations. If, this being type 1, if it's an urban street front, say it's down in Silver Spring, you know, the platform or the stop, say the station, can actually be incorporated right in the sidewalk. The sidewalk is a through sidewalk, and basically you have your marker, which would be a smart marker, which has your real-time signage, has your maps. Ticket vending machine would be right adjacent to it, and you know exactly where to go for the bus. Next one. This is more the sort of prototypical station at a lower capacity, and this gets into budget. We wanted to illustrate how you can basically make a strategic, effective investment and plan for future growth. So the platform, if it's 60 feet plus and it's about 11 feet wide, you have a marker, you have a canopy, and you have the full platform, and you incorporate landscapes so it has a sense of place for the station. Next one is, and you build the platform, you pour a little extra concrete at the beginning, you put some conduits there for any electrical, and if the capacity grows, you add another canopy. These canopies are intended to basically kind of like plop down on the platforms. Windscreens we're looking at being detached so that it's not like a bus where it only protects your back. We can actually use them to create microclimates and actually gear towards where the wind direction is. Next one, higher capacity, maybe you plant a few more canopies. Next one, BRTs. This is probably the highest capacity platform. So here you might, because you're actually going to have 2 buses stacking, you would have essentially 4 shelter areas. And the last one is double-sided. If it's got the left-sided buses, basically you'd have directional entrances from both sides of the platform, and they'd be oriented to the buses. So I think this gets at, there's no simple question of what's the budget per station. It's how you actually design smartly and effectively, and cost-effectively, and then basically grow within the budget that has been identified by Joanne previously. And so, you know, as this shows, there's no one number fits all, but you know, we have to basically design smart to be under the budget.
I'm sorry, I want to take questions. The thing is that we really want to make sure we have time to get into the context-specific questions you have about the activity. If we run out of time, it would be really unfortunate. So I think it would be great, generally, we're going to be talking about the station design. We're also going to be talking about local bus service. And so to make sure, because I know a lot of you came in here after doing work, you know, taking time out of your day to do this, can we do this? But I just want to note again, just to be very clear, you know, when you provide feedback, we take it seriously whether it's during the meeting or between the meetings. So any questions that we get, if we're trying to move forward, it's just because we want to make sure we're maintaining time and that there's an equal opportunity for everyone here to voice their opinion. So I'm going to turn it over to Rick, and we're going to, again, roll up our sleeves and get involved in the activities. So take it away, Rick.
All right, thank you. All right, so as I said earlier, we're going to talk about the White Oak Transit Center and the Briggs Cheney parking ride, which is right outside the door here. We're going to start with the White Oak Transit Center. And we presented to you this exercise, this graphic, and gave you a sense of where we're thinking a platform could potentially be located. That's the yellow hatched area. And so as you can imagine, there's an opportunity for a northbound curb platform, a southbound curb platform, or as Otto illustrated with his last exhibit of the family of stations, maybe something that is, thank you, maybe something that is median oriented that would serve both the northbound and southbound with left side door boarding. So for those of you who had a chance to make it out there or are familiar with the area, why don't we just start the conversation here. What aspects of this area did you find interesting that might be a possible opportunity for us, or a potential impact or a setback? So any thoughts right off the bat?
I don't know, it's kind of a little bit away from the main shopping, it's kind of behind the Giant, and to me, if I were waiting for a bus there late in the evening, the way it is now, I would be a little bit concerned.
Yeah, well, I understand that. Well, what we're trying to do though here is build on what transit is already on. So there's an existing transit stop here, just before the intersection coming out of the shopping center, and then one down closer to the back entrance. With our thoughts with respect to this area, we're trying to maybe sort of combine those and create a larger transit center where you're going to have more people. It's not going to be as remote as you might suggest. So the idea is, again, is to try to get more people into this area and create more of a central White Oak Transit Center as opposed to this little piece here and that little piece there. So by trying to connect those is really what we're shooting for.
How are you combining them if you're talking about an elevated platform, but you've already got 4 buses at those 2 bus stops that would not be elevated? So
Correct.
how does that combine to be a transit?
By combining them, we're putting them immediately next to one another. That's the best we can do, because our BRT stops cannot accommodate, our plan is for them to not accommodate the local stops.
That's a better way to phrase it, your
Yes.
plan.
Our
That's
plan
what's
is to
been
do that,
decided.
right.
There's no necessarily rhyme or reason to that, but that's
Well,
what's
there
been
is, because
decided.
we have a fare collection policy for concern. So we want to make sure that there's no confusion that if you're standing on a BRT platform, you know you need to have paid in advance. If you're standing at a local stop, you're going to pay the traditional way when you get on the bus and pay the driver.
Well, there's many ways to do that. That doesn't have to happen by, but in this particular area, it's constrained, it's pretty small. I don't know the exact right of way there in terms of where it is relative to the existing road edge. But when you have the buses coming and going, people turning into the shopping center or out from the back, from the front, from the
Yes.
apartments, and lots and lots and lots of pedestrian traffic today.
Right. Which is
So-
ideally where you want to have a bus stop, is where the pedestrians are.
Well, not an argument in terms about that, but an argument in terms of how you fit this in without making it much more dangerous. That's a real serious concern for this one.
Yeah, I would agree.
But let me just say that this whole foofaraw about station details for a service that has as yet had no traffic studies, no operational planning, no design, or no engineering is just silly.
Okay,
Wait,
Hold on.
We're not
We're gonna have,
gonna-
excuse me, I just
we're not
wanna
gonna go there.
clarify. I'm gonna have Joanna respond to that, but what I
I'm
wanna do
actually
is.
not going to respond to that because it's off topic from what we're here to discuss, and I feel like we've already gotten to a lot of things that are off topic. We have very limited time, we're already at almost 8 o'clock. We have another site after this to look at, so let's continue on with the questions that Rick is asking us about this specific site, okay?
Good. I have a comment.
Peter,
My
please.
comment again is considering the future. You've got BRTs coming down New Hampshire, you've got BRTs coming down Randolph Road, and where else? University. The key in all of that is making sure that someone gets off on one of those BRT routes can get to this BRT route expeditiously without having to cross too many streets. And therefore, my preference is to move the stations up towards the front rather than to the back, which is what I've heard you mention also. So rather than to the curb, move them up to the front, so that if you put a BRT station over there by the Boston Food Market or across the street from it, then people don't have a lot of distance to walk to.
Yeah, I
You know,
understand.
we've got to consider the future.
Right, right. So I think what Peter's describing is that on New Hampshire Avenue, there's a future BRT corridor proposed there. Our corridor for the US 29, we have one of the two service patterns coming across Lockwood. So this clearly is an area where we're going to have a lot of people. So we want to make sure that we accommodate as best we can the opportunity for transfers. And so when we look at this area, again, our White Oak Transit Center, we were talking about curb platforms here or possibly a meeting platform here that helps to connect this boarding area with this boarding area. I think if I can make some assumptions on what you've said, we don't want to really be up in this area. We don't want to be up in the apartment area.
Right.
We want to be either in this area or closer to New Hampshire. Same thing, we're not really talking about it right now, but we can talk about it after the meeting, is the Oak Leaf Station, which is on this side of New Hampshire. I think you would agree that you want to see that station closer to New Hampshire as well, again, to help facilitate some of those connections.
And I would like to amplify that. If you bring that station closer, then it can work with the New Hampshire, and less people need to cross the road. The people at the high rises and the stuff on the right can get on the buses on that side, and the people in the shopping center and the garden apartments can get on the buses on this side.
Very good.
To me, you need to keep people out of the road as much as you can.
Yeah, yeah. Shane, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying about making it green, but it's a balance.
It's a balance, right.
Because there's a lot of density back in those apartments.
There is also.
And those are a lot of riders, particularly the population there is some of them are of more limited means and might be more likely to be riders.
Right, as Allison's pointing out here on the down center of the screen.
That's enormous density.
Yeah.
So it's
right.
I'm not saying that it doesn't, it will be superior for purposes of transfer, but it might not be superior for purposes of the population who's walking.
Well, part of it is we need to have
just to say,
local buses go into a lot of those areas and pick people up and take them to the BRT.
Yeah.
So to me, you can't look at this thing, the platforms in isolation from
The feeder lines.
local buses.
Right. Yeah.
Because to me, you need the local buses to go out and pick up people. And I think you were alluding to it, you need the local bus stop to be close to the BRT so it's easy to transfer.
Yep.
In this area you're talking about on the north side towards the Giant, you got quite a bit of space in there, but you've got so many curb cuts on the south side, it's really a bear because you have a 60-foot vehicle and a lot of those curb cuts are about 60 foot or under.
Yeah.
So you've got real problems. I was thinking of trying to do, and up by the self-storage area, do the BRT and the local buses kind of all up there together. But you need to, somebody needs to measure all the things and see what fits.
So I think Dan is referring generally to this area. This
On the
is
south
this
side.
is the storage buildings, the public storage buildings. And so as we think about that, I would tell you that this section of Lockwood is problematic for BRT because it's on a curve. So we need to have our platforms that are tangent sections so that we can have adjacent boarding and the gap between the bus and
What you were talking about earlier is maybe put the ride on.
Well, that's right, exactly. So Dan and I were talking earlier that there are two stops here. Essentially, it's one larger stop with the Metro and the ride-on service. If that were to shift and then we put the transit here, that might be an option. Yeah. So let's talk about the two curbsides. Jim, quickly?
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say for these locations, if you're considering putting a station there, you need to do a sidewalk inventory. Have you ever walked around Tyson's Corners?
Yes. You live over there.
Well, yeah. Well, that's been one of the issues though with the Silver Line stations.
Yeah.
Is they're lacking sidewalks to get
Lots of
to
parking lots, but few sidewalks.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so why do you put mass transit and you can't walk to it?
Agreed.
So you need to do an inventory so that you can identify where you need to be building sidewalks.
Yes, as part of this study,
Part of what you do.
as part of this study, we are looking at those connections. We're not funding those connections, but we are going to see if there are any gaps identified between, say, those apartments. We're not going to look a mile out because nobody's going to walk that distance. But if there's something in this area and there's a gap in the sidewalks. We'll look to fill those in. Sebastian?
Taking a step back, can we zoom out a little bit in the map and just to show, there's a station at Stewart Lane and
Right.
Oak View, and so I wanted to clarify for the group.
No, Oak Leaf? Yes.
Like Oak Leaf, I mean, that's serving those three dollars.
Yeah.
So that's taken care of on the south side of New Hampshire, correct? Presumably.
Right. Where Allison has her pointer right now is where the master plan identified the Oak Leaf station. We were thinking, when we looked at this area, that because of the issues with respect to the local stop and being right on the curb, we were thinking more in this area for our station. But that's a little contrary to what Dan and Peter would like to see. I think they would like to see something in this section. Right. Of course, we have driveways and houses facing the street, so there are always issues we've got to be thinking about. But I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I don't want to go into the details of that station, but
Yeah.
just to clarify, there's a station for the people south of New Hampshire.
That's right.
And I wanted to just check to see where's the kind of service
The
areas
April Lane.
for
April
Stewart
Lane.
Lane, or is it?
Up right there.
April Lane, sorry.
Right there.
Yes,
April
right.
Lane and the others.
Yes, so our proposed station for the Stewart Lane platforms are really right here. And so we think that captures a good amount of the garden-style apartment buildings in that area. And then again, as you can see Lockwood down here, you know, there's probably a little bit of an area that's not served. Nobody would be willing to necessarily walk that distance. But again, that local service, there are 2 Z routes, and the number 10, I think, right-on route goes up and down Lockwood all the time.
Backs up traffic all the time.
Exactly.
Just the one bus getting in and out of that bus shelter, and when they clump, it really backs up. And that's kind of the point I was raising up above too. I think it's really pie in the sky to be thinking that you're going to wedge these things in there without serious impacts. You know, it all sounds lovely, but knowing that stuff gets backed up now and given the dimensions of what you're talking about putting in there, unless you're going to be, unless the SO is going to let you locate it in the parking lot, you're going to have a lot of both backup and dangerous mix of buses and pedestrians.
Well, we've had our surveyors out in the area. We haven't gotten the data from them yet, but we have surveyed this whole area, and so we will know very soon how much width we have with respect to buses at the curbside and available space for passengers or for single occupancy vehicles or cars to pass. I think part of the problem that you might be seeing at these stations is the median barrier that has been installed here to keep traffic flowing through these areas. So that sort of tightens things up. I think in the center here, there might be a little bit more space, but when we get that survey data, we'll know better as to how wide we have there and how much room there is for widening. So if I can, oh, I'm sorry, question?
No, I just wanted to note, you know, another component of Carolyn's comment is related to local bus service planning. So I think that that's something that, you know, we're gonna when we close out, we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yes.
But we're gonna continue that conversation. So there's other data sets we can discuss.
Great. So
also, I'm thinking when you build on what she was saying, part of what, at least in our comments, you may want to shift the local bus services stations a little bit one way or another as you figure all this stuff out and figure, you got a lot of pieces to a puzzle and you know exactly how you put them together, but one of the things you need to think about is where the local bus stops are and should they change plus or minus, and one of the criteria should be to minimize, you know, other vehicle congestion, because there's a couple places in here where bus stops and it blocks the whole road.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a look at that for sure. So what I'd like to do is let's isolate the northbound and southbound in this area because they do have different conditions. So let's talk about the southbound movement first. I think it's a little bit easier. And for the time being, I'm going to take the median idea off the table. We're just going to talk about the southbound curbside. So we've got a couple existing sort of stops here to the north, let's call it, and then these down here to the south. I was out there before this meeting and I measured this area. There's an existing 8-foot sidewalk, and then there's about 8 feet of grass area that sort of drops off to the back, the loading dock for the Giant and the other retailers here. So if we were to build a short retaining wall at the back edge of that pavement, I think there's enough room there to put a station in. What you would end up having is that the sidewalk that's there today would actually walk through the platform. Otto briefly described that a little bit when he talked about the first one.
Right.
In areas where
Station one, right.
yeah, when areas where you don't have room to replace the sidewalk around behind the platform, and then you potentially have an opportunity to let that pedestrian traffic go through the station. We want to make sure in those situations that we don't build a minimum width station. We don't put a 5-foot width platform. We never would do a 5-foot, but we don't do something so small that people standing there would create a blockage for the people simply trying to get through. So I see personally that we could literally, anywhere between these 2 points, we could probably fit a southbound platform.
What's the height of the curb normally? On
So what we're talking about now is somewhere in the range of 10 to 12 inches for the height of the curb.
The ramp has to be at least 10 to 12 feet at ADA requirements.
Right, so we've got the 65-foot length, which would be the actual bus loading platform, and then we transition back down a little bit on the ends to the existing curb height. So there's a little bit of ramp, as you were describing, Peter, that ties into the existing sidewalk. So while our physical platform footprint is 65, we're maybe thinking 75, 80 would be the overall footprint of the entire.
From edge of ramp to edge of ramp.
Yeah, basically. Again, that'll vary.
Assuming grade.
Right, exactly. I was going to make that point. So that'll vary because if you're on a hill already and you raise the sidewalk, this one ties in quickly and this one ties in much longer.
Right.
Yeah, so it varies. You'll never get a uniform ramp on each side. So, any other thoughts southbound? I mean,
when you do have that space to walk through, the added foot traffic along that path, a good chunk of that's probably going to go into the shopping center. Congratulations. But that still has the potential to create more traffic, more conflicts between the cars going in and out of the shopping center and the foot traffic.
Okay.
And without some other kind of off-station accommodation changes, there's potential for actually more pedestrian issues rather than less.
Yeah. The reason I walked over here and I was listening to you, but I wanted to get to the graphic here. So Allison, can you show me the corner of the shopping center right here? This inside corner. One more down. There is a walk-through position right here in that inside corner. So I think if people were going to the shopping center from this back area, not from the bus stop itself, but from this back area, I personally would probably cut through here and access the shopping center. If I were going to the Boston Market, I may be on this sidewalk. But generally speaking, I probably want to walk in front of the shopping center as opposed to behind it. It is, good. But I understand your point too, that if you're in this area, you sort of have an option. But in either case, you're going to have to be on that sidewalk. Yes. So, go ahead.
As long as you're talking about southbound, picking up on what Carol Adams was talking about, the congestion. Back when we were doing the planning for the transportation for the FDA, I was on the coordinating committee between the state and the county as far as redoing that intersection of Lockwood and New Hampshire.
Okay.
The big problem that came up, that they really didn't come up with a solution for, was that entrance there, entrance and exit to the shopping center right there across, right there.
Yeah.
I think it is safe to say that the changes that they made probably made it worse.
Did at that point, did it allow the right turnout too? Well, I think that is something that's...
And once upon a time.
A number of things. They put that light in there.
Here?
No, well, yeah, a little bit further north there.
Yeah.
Okay. That light is not really coordinated with the light there on New Hampshire.
Yeah.
In fact, it's the only light I think I've ever seen that if a car is coming out of the 7-Eleven parking lot, it changes the light.
Oh, so it's actuated here?
Yes, it's actuated there.
Okay.
That's so that the people coming out of the 7-Eleven lot can actually make a turn in there without being impeded. The other interesting thing is that there is a button for pedestrian crosswalk coming out of that entrance there.
For this crosswalk?
Coming out of the shopping center.
Oh, over here?
Right there.
Yes.
The button is in the median.
Okay.
So you have to cross the traffic in order to get to the button.
Yes.
The bottom line is that I think that a lot of the congestion, particularly during rush hour, could be alleviated if some thought was given to actually making those signals work more effectively.
Okay.
And I think that's going to have to be done if you're going to move buses in and out.
Very good, very good. We'll make a note of that. All right, so we need to be aware that any movement of buses through here are impacted by those intersections, for sure. Dan?
The other thing, I don't see it on this map, but when I Googled it at home, I saw some bus stops from the intersection we were just talking about down to New Hampshire Avenue.
Yeah.
I would eliminate those, move them farther down, because there's so many traffic movements in there. I would try to free that stuff up.
Are you saying this piece?
Yeah, I don't see it there on the map,
Yeah.
but you might check that out.
Okay.
I couldn't believe there were bus stops.
All right, we will do that. We will do that. Jim?
Okay, a couple points here. I don't know if you actually take the bus or just Metro.
I do, well, I'm not a DC resident, so in Baltimore, I do ride the
bus here on 29. And so there were some issues along here because the stalls to be so close to the street, night to night, with all that rain, if you're standing in that stall, just waves of water come cascading from all the cars that are dashing past. So it's really miserable when there's snow, and the snow clouds come waving past with you, huge waves of snow and crap at you.
Okay.
So you need some protection from all that.
Good.
Which
Good.
then
What's your
you're huddling in the bus stall for protection.
Yeah.
And so the drivers don't see you there, and so they go roaring past.
All right, we'll need to be aware of that as we develop the canopy and then the windscreen around that. We need
So
to
the
be,
driver needs to be able to see
Yeah.
on a dark night like
Right,
this.
right.
Someone is huddling in a corner trying not to get drenched.
Yeah.
Instead of having the bus go
Or a
by.
light or something that you push that.
yeah, well, one of the advantages of our BRT stops is, unlike a local stop, which is generally just a signpost next to a curb, those aren't lit very well except for the overall street lighting.
But
we will
also,
have specific lighting
We're
at our
just right
station.
behind schedule, so they're in a hurry, so the bus drivers go whipping past stops because they're trying to stay on schedule.
Yeah, well, they have a limited number of stops, so I'm sure they're gonna be stopping at all our stops.
Are there rider activation buttons at these stations?
No,
like they-
no. Just, the driver ought to be stopping
Like
every.
pedestrian activation.
In this case, unlike, you know, in Baltimore on the light rail, they had a thing where on the train, you have to identify, tell the driver to stop at your stop. But that's part of the system, but quite honestly, the driver stops at every station regardless.
Regardless, because I was thinking about the situation, we talked about how you've got to put in a sidewalk to watch the station, such as this one possibility. The driver approaching won't necessarily know whether that person in the sidewalk
Right.
is
We-
or going through.
Right, we don't
Or
have.
even hiding behind it.
Yeah, right, trying to protect himself from the weather or the splash.
Yeah, right.
Yes, so, and I would acknowledge that part of that is the responsibility of the rider to be looking for when the bus is coming and stepping out and flagging the bus. Because if you're hiding, then the bus, it's sort of.
It's pouring down rain.
It sounds like an urban design challenge where
Yeah,
what we're
absolutely.
trying to do
Yeah.
is provide a benefit for access. And I think, again, you know, some of these conditions that we're discussing, whether we're discussing bus bunching or reliability in terms of on-time
Yeah.
performance, is dovetailing our local bus discussion, which is really a critical piece of how the actual alignment engages with the station. So it's good to have that insight for both the urban design parameters as well as that. So we're making notes of that. So
Okay.
But you're standing next to a 6-lane highway and cars speeding along.
Yeah, your point's well taken. I ride the route up here. I see exactly what you're saying.
So northbound, let's talk northbound now. Northbound, we have many more problems than we do southbound. And the primary problem that I see is multiple are all those driveways. So we don't have very many opportunities to put a 65-foot platform, plus those little ramps that I told you, within that area without impacting a driveway. And so we don't want to have any negative impacts on the businesses. We don't want to hamper their success. We don't want to be taking away driveways. If we had to shift the driveway to give us another 5 or 10 feet, we may want to think about that. Of course, that adds to the cost of the project. But I would say I was out there before this meeting this evening, and I did do a little measuring. And so, let's see where we are. Here we go. The distance between these, yes. Yes, the distance between these two entrances is, what, Allison, I'm sorry? 75 feet. So we could potentially get a platform in here. Okay? The distance between these two driveways, Allison, what's the number?
67.
67. So I don't think we could get a platform in here unless, as you see, this driveway comes out and makes this sort of swoop here. If that driveway were to be realigned, we could potentially expand that area and maybe fit the platform in there. Go ahead.
What are your thoughts on, for the southbound, go on the shopping center side?
Yeah.
And while there's a center median, which is designed theoretically to be dual load, what if you put the center median for the northbound bus only?
That is absolutely possible.
So,
Yes.
so have the
So
center
a
median
median?
for north only,
Mhm.
because most of the density, whether they're transferring or anything, is likely going to the north.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it would allow vehicles to continue to pass by and not have them stop by pedestrians on the south side of the curve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a very good idea. So let.
We're at the 15-minute mark.
Okay. All right, well, we're gonna run a little long, as I told you the other night before, so.
Listen, I
so-
understand.
Yeah, we're doing well now, we're doing well.
Okay.
So let's talk about that north side as it relates to the median, and then what opportunities we have in the median. So under your suggestion, the south side stays on the curve, the north side moves to the median and only serves the northbound platform, the northbound buses. We also then have the option, Otto suggested in his graphic, like Metro, where you have a center platform and boardings on both sides. That's one typical median, but you can also do this, where you stack them, instead of having them side by side, where you need a little bit more width, you stack them and have one sort of as a walk through the other, similar to what you're saying, but now I'm putting the southbound one there as well. That could create more synergy, in a sense, of having both stations together. You're not separating them, you're not resulting in any confusion whatsoever, but putting them like that, the width is narrower, and we've got canopies that could serve all needs. That is an option too that I wanted to throw out to you and see what you guys thought.
But you would have all of those riders on the south side that went to the median needing to cross the road to get out of the median unnecessarily.
Yeah, so in any case, we're gonna have people crossing the road, either the full width of the road in the morning and none of the road in the afternoon, or half and half in the morning and the afternoon. So I understand your point though, but we just wanna be careful and understand how people are crossing the street here.
One thing with that one is you gotta worry about pedestrians in the middle and make sure they're safe. But the other thing is you can move the south platform a little farther up where you got more space.
Now I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. When you say the south platform, are you mean the existing stop here?
On the down the bottom of the screen.
Yep.
What we were just talking about. You can
The
move
northbound platform.
Northbound platform. You can move it a little farther up, at where you got more curve without impacting driveway. There's space up there to do it.
Yeah.
I think you got a number of options you can look at and come back at us and see what works best.
Good.
I'm sorry, in terms of comments, I just want to make sure I'm tracking. I saw a hand from Matt, I saw a hand from Peter, and then we'll go through.
We'll do it any way you want. Okay, so go ahead, Peter. I'll come right to you, Brian.
The one thing we haven't looked at is the use of this space in front of the businesses.
Yes.
Is there a way to talk to the businesses to basically eliminate some of these curb cuts and have a common egress, ingress for these businesses across the way where some of these partitions are removed so that they have a common flow? This is something we looked at the Burtonsville solution.
Yes.
And that's something that would give you the space that you need for the buses.
So if I can put it into a common term so that I think, or a common situation so that everybody recognize, I think of Rockville Pike. Rockville Pike's got the main roadway plus these service roads, and most of the businesses access the service roads with very limited connections to the main line. Unfortunately, that was master planned in. This is not. So to get these businesses to accept a new service road, essentially a road that would cut through their parking lots, taking some existing parking, I think is going to be probably too big of a wall to jump for us, or too big of a hurdle to jump.
If you don't ask, you won't know.
I agree with you. I agree with you. That's certainly something we want to consider. Yeah, Brian.
Okay. If the platforms on the northbound platforms are on the, I guess this side.
Yes, just say the north side.
The north side.
Say northbound, southbound.
It seems to me, if you need 65 to 75 feet, it seems to me you need much more than that between curb cuts, because otherwise you have a curb cut right next to the front of the bus, or the back of the bus, and so it seems to me, I start to think of it as it's basically you're blocking someone's view. You're tempting them to pull out, but you're blocking the view.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's not ideal.
now, if you put them in the middle of the road, as in particular, if you were to stack them, okay, what you've done is eliminated left turns into curb cuts.
Right,
You know,
right.
block complete, but you eliminated left turns, so then you've got that issue to deal with.
Exactly
So I
right,
don't know how-
exactly right.
I'm
So,
not necessarily sure how you solve it.
Yes.
I tend to think that as a business owner, quite honestly, I would be more, I think, I would probably not like the solution of blocks and left turns
yeah.
into my business.
Okay, so what
Give it a choice between the two.
yeah, so what Brian is trying to state, and I think he's done it very well, but if I can help to explain the situation. So if we have a median platform, that restricts movements out of those driveways and making that left turn to go over toward New Hampshire. So one or two of those driveways would be blocked, and so that driveway, say the one here, let's say we put the platform right here where Allison's got us, that driveway out of the public storage would have to be a right in and right out only. There would be no ability to cross that median because we're going to have a station right there. Now, we could be careful and I try to find the best spot for that station so that we minimize that. We maybe only impact one driveway. Let's say we do it the next area here. If we do it down here near this one, there are actually two driveways that serve these 3 or 4 businesses here. Maybe that is the solution if they've got an alternate driveway that they can come out of left. Although I think this one might be somewhat limited too. But regardless,
And we do have to provide pedestrian connections to the station.
that's right. Yes.
From a signalized location.
Yeah, we can't just we can't just have an island station sitting out here without any pedestrian connections either to the sidewalk or to the crosswalk. So these crosswalks are very far into it. We would have to have some sort of pedestrian connections across there as well. So, as you can see, go ahead.
When you start talking like that, you're getting back to Peter's question about looking at the property owners here and taking some space there. I mean, Brian, do you know who owns that? Is that a block ownership or is it individual? Do you know?
I think it's pretty much individual.
I just pulled it up on the map, and these are 2 different parcels, but they're the same owner.
I would
Okay.
think, oh, they are?
Yeah, but I would bet most of them are individually and
They may be, but
owned.
if I'm an owner and somebody would want to put me on a transit route,
Yeah.
and it's gonna take a little bit of my parking space, possibly, that I'm not actually gonna miss anything,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I wouldn't beg you to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's something that.
We're certainly happy to go out and talk with these people and see what they think about it. My gut sense is when I see some of these cars and some of this parking, you know, clearly they're trying to take advantage of every space they've got. You can see this multiple grouping here, parking. And I noticed here, when I parked here this afternoon and I pulled in here, and they've got a number of spaces, they've striped out every available space. Now, it's a public storage, so I doubt they get that much traffic. But I do see a reasonable limitation of parking. But again, which is not to say we can't check into that and see what their willingness would be. Clearly, the county would have to pay for that additional right-of-way, that additional impact on their business. But that is an option we want to pursue.
This is the 7-Eleven.
No, the 7-Eleven is on down here. This is the public storage building.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the 7-Eleven is down on the other side, of the south side, almost right at the intersection here.
I thought public storage is down there on the right.
Yeah, wait a minute.
I think you're
Yeah, so
shifted a little bit.
I'm sorry, New Hampshire is down here.
That's true.
The exit out of the shopping center is right about here. If we can go back to the.
Yeah, let's do the big picture.
Yeah.
So much going on there, it's very confusing.
Reset the north. Yeah. Yeah, so we're looking at this area. This is the public storage building with its access, the gate right here, to access these buildings. We're talking about this area. The 7-Eleven is down here, closer to this intersection. Outside the area.
It's also public storage?
Yeah, that's what they're building with the interior storages. So again, there are a number of options. The point of this whole conversation is to hear what you guys think in terms of the issues and explain to you what we're seeing in terms of issues and trying to find a common solution. Matt, real quick.
I'm still thinking, I've been there as a pedestrian, I've been there as a bus rider, I've been there as an automobile driver, and I keep thinking that the interaction between automobile drivers and pedestrians and bus riders there is kind of tense now. And I think I'm being very careful. It's a good place to put it, but I think you have to really go the extra mile to put enough pedestrian crossings and make sure that the drivers don't drive.
Right. Very fair point. Very fair point. I think the more people we put out there, it does two things. It's a negative and a positive. Negative because it creates greater impact with the cars that are out there, but a positive in that the more people there, the more the drivers are aware that people are there, and therefore they're more cautious.
So as we're going into the next exercise, I just wanted to ask the group a question just to get a general consensus. I think that this conversation is really critical, both for the first exercise and then the one we're going to review for the Briggs Cheney Park and Ride. I do want to ensure we have some time to talk briefly about local bus as well. It's really just an introduction to concepts that we'll be discussing in another meeting. So I wanted to know if everyone was comfortable with us continuing this activity until 8:30. And then if we could take just an additional 15 minutes to do a 10-minute update on local bus and 5-minute closeout. Would that be okay?
Great. Okay. So we're changing gears now. We're going to talk about the Briggs Cheney Park and Ride. There's one primary thing that's unique about Briggs Cheney Park and Ride for us, is that it's the terminal station for one of our service routes. And as such, this will be the layover position for the buses on the route. So they start here, they go down to Silver Spring, they don't hang out there, they just alight and board, turn right back around and come north, because there's no room in the Silver Spring Transit Center for them to linger. There's just too much going on there. There's just no space for them to do anything other than alight, board, and get back out. So the idea is that they're going to have their layovers here, they might have their lunch breaks here. One of the things, because of that, we're going to be accommodating their personal needs with restroom facilities, probably a comfort station somewhere in this area. Obviously it'll be designed appropriately architecturally to match the context of the community. It won't just look like an outhouse. And so we need to be thinking about that. But the bigger point here is that in this location and at Burtonsville, we need a platform that's 125 feet long. We need to be able to stage 2 buses on a regular basis there. Okay, so the green box. If you looked at the exercise, you saw this green box is twice as big as the green boxes that were on the others. Which I was trying to do that to help you understand that we need a bigger space here. So I think it was family station number 5, if I'm not mistaken, was the double link platform, the 125. So again, doing my homework, I was out there in the rain this afternoon, and I noted that the existing median or the existing curb platform for the local service is about this tangent portion here is about 145 feet long, and the width is about 15 feet wide. When I look at the other side, not including the curvature of the approaches here, the tangent portion is only 80 feet long. Yeah. So what we are thinking, first off, is in the effort of compartmentalizing and keeping separate the local service from the BRT service, we decided that anything sharing that connection and platform here with the local service is sort of off the table, because we need to have that separation. We then thought, well, since there's an island there, why don't we just come in on the other side of it? So we thought about potentially coming in on this side, but recognized that that island right now is only 15 feet wide, and if we need to have our platform a little bit higher than that, we need to have our own 15-foot width adjacent to that. So we're now sort of growing into the parking lot, and when we grow into the parking lot, we force the relocation of those end caps for these 3 aisles, and that takes additional parking out of there, possibly 12 spaces maybe. And then we also need to be aware of the curvature and the maneuverability. If we pull the bus in on this side, can they, we'd have to modify this nose so that they can get back out here to the light. So that was something we considered too. But again, the impact on the parking was something that we thought was a negative. So we just kept sort of iterating this idea and thought, well, if we're going to be pulling into this area, and if there's plenty of space here, again, those local buses are stopping on this side, why don't we modify this center area, in fact, rehab it in its entirety, really create a new space there. expand this island, again, I keep pointing to you guys so you can help, so you can understand it. So expand this island, relocate this entrance back a little bit so that we can get the length we need here. The 125 feet basically from there to there. It's the length of that green box. Apply that here. The driveway would sort of come in like this. All buses would use the new entrance, serve the local stop or serve the BRT. We have the 2 spaces for BRT. Everybody's happy. What do you think? Any positive, negative thoughts? Matt, you start.
I'm just a little bit unhappy, and that's not, I think the placement is good, the idea is really good.
Okay.
But I'm still thinking in the back of my mind of users of the BRT, how, if they want to go to the shopping center, and this is probably somebody else's problem, but is it, a safe, inviting way to walk from here to the Briggs Trinity Shopping Center? Because I don't think they want to wait for a local bus, to ride on a local bus for 2 or 3 minutes. So, like I said, this might be somebody else's problem.
Yeah. No, but I understand your things. But remember, this is our terminal station, so we're taking advantage more of the park and ride as opposed to access to attractions like the shopping center.
That's true, but I just like to make sure that doesn't get lost.
Another thought.
A couple of thoughts.
Dan.
On the restroom, since there's a rec center there and there's a government center where we have, rather than building your own restroom, maybe you could share.
Absolutely, absolutely. We need to be aware though of open hours. Yes, and modify that accordingly. Right. Yes.
Well, and I will tell you that, I mean, this is an issue now for the operators, and we haven't been able to work it out yet, so.
Should we go beat them up?
Sign a petition, get something started here.
Anyway.
We need to make sure that we get access. And I would even argue that maybe we put, connected to the building, because that's where the sewer and water is, but an exterior entrance like the old gas stations used to be.
Well, I like the idea, what we were thinking is having the local buses and BRT all on one line so it's easy to transfer.
Yeah.
And I wasn't aware of the need for 2 buses there.
I remember when Peter and I were talking, and when I read your essay.
Well, I was thinking 1 bus, 1 BRT. So,
right.
But you could also take the same idea and just expand what you're talking about, expand it farther down and do the same thing.
On this platform.
Well, that platform and have it farther down, you got all that green area down there.
Right,
and achieve that down there, that way people from the parking lot can go to the platform. You may have to line the platform.
Yeah.
And put all the buses one after another. 2
Right.
BRTs and a couple rhinos.
That is a potential. So as you're suggesting, still maintain the local stop here, but do something with this, not necessarily take it away in its entirety until we investigate the impacts, but really extend this and maybe move the entrance here, and so that all buses load on the same platform basically, although you have the local at the end and the higher platform BRT at the back, or vice versa.
And buses could come in by the rec center and just call them all the way down if you had to. This is where your distance is, you need to figure out your distances.
Right, and we have curvature concerns with the articulated buses. They're not as maneuverable as the standard 40-foot buses. These are 60-foot buses. Basically a bus with a trailer, in a sense. It's a 40-foot bus with a 20-foot trailer, or in some cases a 30-foot bus and 30-foot trailer.
But it permits you to enhance the green space also and make it into something that people can use, versus now where it's 2 little islands that aren't readily being used.
They're not at all, right. In fact, I would argue that design was probably about 20, 25 years old, and it probably could stand to be refreshed as well. And so that's what we were thinking about in terms of our bigger vision. When we expand this, we could actually redevelop this whole plaza, put in some art, whatever you want to put in there. Obviously, you'd have your platform with your canopies and such, and then that would extend onto this area, and maybe even do a little rehab up here.
And even if you have ride on this side, rather than if you're gonna work on this, rather than bump this out, the additional 15 feet you need, bump it out this way as you trim some of this also.
Ah, that's an idea. Yes, okay. That's a very good idea.
That way your BRTs can line up. You can chop this off so they can come.
Yeah, there is a good amount of width here.
There is a good amount.
And so what Peter's suggesting is expand that platform to the ICC in that direction, such that the BRT has the space here without having to encroach into the parking lot any more than just having to.
Because you won't be able to encroach there since they're thinking of building the senior center and taking away 100 and some parking lots.
I wouldn't favor of parking.
Yeah, we definitely want to be careful that we don't impact the parking, but I think Peter's idea is a valid one, if we can make sure that we have the curvature coming out of here, and we simply shift the local over.
I think you
and
have enough
change that.
space in there to play with and figure out what works best.
Very good, very good. Okay, other thoughts?
I'm just gonna
Actually,
say,
what
the
goes
way
on
it's
there
designed-
is,
Brian
you're
has
standing
his-
in the cold or standing in the heat, the driver's sitting in this nice bus that's either heated or air conditioned. And so, yeah, if you're a rider, traveling in your car comfortable sounds a lot better than standing there because the driver won't let you on the bus.
Yeah. Well, that's a question of whether you choose to ride transit or not. So we're not really talking about that this evening, but I understand your point about drivers ought to be opening the doors and letting people on.
Well,
Yeah.
or you're talking
Brian,
about
I'm sorry.
having more people for all these buses sitting there. So what you really do is actually have a transfer station that, unless you have those kinds of amenities, it's rough duty staying out there for the amount of time between these buses.
Yeah, I agree. Brian?
I'm just gonna say, it seems to me the way it's set up, that there's, one of the verses is to separate the park and ride traffic and the bus traffic from the traffic that goes in this entrance, really, because the community center. So, the thing you have to be careful about is making sure you maintain that separation, because I think given the nature of the people going in and out of the community center, you would want to avoid a situation where people using park and ride start to come in that entrance more often because there are too many buses or too many turns, or it's not quite as convenient. I think that would be, you'd really want to be careful about it.
Okay, Sebastian, and I'll come right to you, Eric.
And I'm not sure if it's within the scope, but I mean, what if the station were parallel to Briggs Cheney Road? That way the buses would be able to pull out a lot easier. They would be able to use that kind of driveway between the grassy areas in the parking lot. And also the station would be more visible. I'm not saying on Briggs Cheney Road, but within the park and ride.
He's saying rotate the station 90 degrees.
Wait.
So the wall.
Right there, where
Basically,
I see
right
what you're
there.
saying.
Yeah.
And having the station more visible from Briggs Cheney Road might also kind of enhance the, well, obviously the visibility and maybe the prominence of it. But it impacts maybe 20 parking spots, so that's a
You're
trade-off
swapping
there.
one area out for another.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
The reason I think that's, the big advantage of that is I don't see how a bus can make that 90-degree turn in that very constrained space.
Yeah, right. We definitely did some modifications here, probably even expand this, and cut this nose up a little bit, if we were gonna do something like that. So, we definitely want to look at that more closely. Eric, did you have a thought?
Yeah, kind of towards what you were saying, to be honest, since we've started meeting here, I've never been sure whether I was supposed to go in there or over there.
Yeah. Right?
And so
This feels like you don't belong, doesn't it?
It feels like I don't belong there,
Yeah.
and so something where either you declare that in fact it's not somewhere where cars belong, and you do make that the priority for only the buses, may actually improve flow anyway, where the cars and the buses are not getting in one another's way, and that this whole entrance is widened so that it's clear that this is the entrance for cars, and simply sealing up those other those two ends as you make those changes to that. Of course, that doesn't work with the idea of putting the station on the other side of the existing platform, but something where it's clear where vehicle traffic and bus traffic.
I agree with you. I mean, because we're going to have, our buses will be 1 every 15 minutes, so that'll add to the already fairly heavy traffic of the local stop. And I agree with you. I've always thought, especially because this is concrete and this is asphalt, you feel like you don't belong, but there's no signage, so you always cut through here anyway.
There is a sign.
Oh, stop.
There's a sign somewhere that says bus only. I don't know if
I
it's
think
here or
it's
it might
here
tell you
into this
here
area.
that you can't go in.
We'll
Has there
investigate
really
that.
been a conflict? I've never seen a conflict.
But the point is that
No,
there's gonna be
I agree. It's a
It's a
perception.
perception thing, but with the increased volume of buses and increased size of buses, that I could easily see that beginning to become a problem.
Yeah. Well, especially because I tend to come out this way too, because I'm continuing right down. I came in park, and when I want to leave, I want to go right out that same entrance. And so it feels especially contrary there because you feel like you're violating the direction, the intended direction of that driveway. Oh, thank you. Okay, 5 minutes. Yes, yes. All right. All right, I think maybe we don't need our 5 minutes. Any other thoughts? So I will tell you that Peter and Dan went above and beyond. They went out and looked at all 11 station sites. And on behalf of Peter, Dan wrote, as I briefly mentioned earlier, an essay, a 7-page essay for me that I reviewed with their recommendations and ideas and thoughts on all 11 stationaries. And we are going to take those into serious consideration. So I would like to, if it's with your permission, I'd like to include this in the meeting minutes so that everybody understands and sees what these two guys have done for their homework. So
the challenge is for everybody else to duplicate that.
No, I'm not going to make that assignment. No.
Okay.
Need more
work. Great. Well, thank you so much, Rick. That
All right,
was,
good. Thank you.
Okay, so with the remaining time we have, we're just going to briefly talk about what we're doing with Local Bus, and with no further ado and with much anticipation, Josh Stein.
All right, I know it's late. I know we've been here for quite some time tonight, so I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. But at the very least, I want you to understand what we've been doing with the local buses, what kind of data we're looking at, what kind of input we're looking for, not only from you guys, but also from the public as a whole. And then kind of go over these concepts that we put together, which are types of ways that we can look at improving or changing the local buses so that it works well with the BRT service. So to start off, we put together an existing conditions report. We looked at all the data possible that WMATA and RIDA would give us, measuring the performance of the routes, riders per mile, riders per hour, riders per trip, ridership, boardings, ons and offs at every stop, by segment, by trip pattern, really anything that they gave us. Also looking at on-time performance from both RIDA and WMATA. And then also looking at the service areas in which these services operate in. So we have a propensity model that uses 60 different transit variables that are linked to the likelihood of any one area supporting transit, whether that person is either a commuter or a transit-oriented person, and considering where they're coming from and where they're going to. And we tie that to WashCog's travel model, so we really can tie those trip patterns together and get a full understanding of where not only transit-dependent people are riding, but choice riders and even people using any other mode of transit as well. So that kind of gives us a background of where transit would be successful. We complement all that data. Data is great to look at. It gives you, ideas of where things should go, but it's not really the whole picture. So what we want to do is really understand the individual travel needs for anybody who is riding transit or might be using transit. So that's the point of coming out and talking to you guys and having as broad a outreach program that we have set up. So we really do get both the qualitative and quantitative inputs we need to make the decisions that will really be impacting pretty much everybody who uses transit along the corridor. So with that, I'm going to go over these concepts that we have. I'm going to give you a little bit of homework too. My hope is that some of you, you went out to 11 stops. There's probably about 20 routes that we looked at. Maybe you want to go ride every one of the routes and come up with ideas for each of them.
Before you leave that,
up to
where
you.
can we get a hold of the existing conditions report?
Right, so
That to us?
right now the county has it. We presented it to them as a draft. So right now it's going through some edits. Once that's finalized, it will be released so that everybody can look at it. We really do want you to have all the information that we're using to make these decisions.
And what's your target date for that?
I think we'll just get back to you. I don't know because it goes through review, but we'll include what next steps are as a part of our update when we email you, and I'll talk about that.
And that'll include the inputs to your model?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yep. Just so you know, it's using LEHD, ACS, census data, and also employment forecasts. We also look at local generators as well. So it's pretty comprehensive, but you will be able to see all the information. So like I was saying, you can or cannot go out and ride the routes, but any kind of inputs that you have or ideas on how to improve the services, I want to collect. So if you do happen to ride all of them, that'd be great. Anyway, going through these concepts, the first are adjustments to the level of service. What we can do is look at the adjusting the frequency of service, how often it comes. And you can really tell if a current frequency is optimal either by having too many people on the bus, which means you probably need more frequent service, or too few people on the buses, which means you might want to dial it back. You can also look at adjusting the spans or the hours of service. If you have too many folks on the bus first trip, you probably need earlier service in the morning. Too many people on the last trip, you probably need later service. And you can also look at that as time as day as well, since, especially on this corridor, we have some services that operate all day long. We have others that operate just in the peak. So do we have some peak services that should be operating all day long, some all day long services that should only be operating in the peak? So we want to look at that as well. New types of services. Earlier we mentioned today that there's going to be a limited stop service on the corridor come 2018. That's something that we can look at for the local services, not just the BRT, but the local services that would feed into the BRT. Are there areas in our corridors that connect to US 29 that would benefit from a limited stop overlay? That's to say that there would be a local service underneath it with more limited stops service on top of that, so that really separates trip purposes for the people that are on the buses. So people taking local trips are on the local bus, people taking longer trips would be on something more limited stop. Another thing to consider is a neighborhood circulator. These would almost be like a feeder type service that would feed into the BRT or the local services to facilitate convenient transfers to the BRT and also provide connections to neighborhood amenities. Another thing to consider is express bus service. Obviously there's a number of these that operate in the corridor already. Are there additional opportunities to promote additional expresses, oftentimes from farther distances away, to either feed into park and ride lots, into our BRT, or even going all the way to Silver Spring. Other things that we look at are route adjustments themselves. We can look at existing routes, relocating stops. We can either remove stops, add stops, optimize stops. Oftentimes for things like limited stop and express service, you really want to know where the optimal place to put a stop is, but not have too many stops so that the bus isn't achieving the speeds that it should be achieving so that it can get to the destination quicker. We can look at route alignments as well. There's a number of different alignments that we can consider, either turning a bus short, we can get into extender route, but also there's opportunities along this corridor where we can join some routes right now. Many of the routes that exist, especially on ride-on, travel from the neighborhoods and then go straight down US 29. That might not be the best thing to do with the BRT coming on. We might want to feed some of those services into the BRT and then continue onto the other side of US 29 by connecting some existing ride-on or Romana services together and forming a new type of route. And then also there's extender route, and this could also be a truncated route. Are there areas that need service that currently do not have service, or areas that have service right now that have too much service? We really want to look at both sides of where the service is needed and how we can use the existing alignments or new alignments to best serve those populations.
So to just build on Carolyn's question and just to clarify in terms of how we're processing service planning data, all the feedback that is in your memo, your public outreach memo, is some of the trade-offs activities we have been considering as a part of our process. But after this meeting, Josh will be available to talk about routes. I'm also going to be sending out a survey. So if there are individual routes that you want to comment on, you can. And we're going to have a continued discussion on that in September as well. So, but feel free to take
Sure. And like everybody else, I'll be around. If you want to talk to me about your existing trip, what's good about it, what's bad about it, we want to hear that. We want to improve upon the experience that you currently have to make local transit the best it can be in this area. Sure, Dan? I'm sorry.
Oh, Peter?
Peter.
Should you have another category up there called payment mechanism adjustment? To see how you marry all the various payment mechanisms together, especially if you're going to have a neighborhood circulator drop someone off at a BRT station. There's got to be some form of payment connectivity there, just like Matthew stated earlier.
Sure. Overall, project-wise, that's something that obviously has to be considered. What we're doing specifically is more related to the alignments of the local buses and the types of services that are needed. But I absolutely agree that that's a strong consideration for any type of integrated system that like this is going to turn out to be.
I like a lot of these things. I'm not, in particular the route realignments. I see a lot of circulator stuff, maybe extended express bus from the edge out, like if you're going to Warren or something. But I'd like to challenge everybody to come in and say, for their area, where you don't have bus service today, where it would make sense to have bus service, local bus service, and not about BRT, but local bus service.
So new markets.
New market, because they're expanding where the buses go, and we got all these cul-de-sacs, and it's hard to get through these neighborhoods. You need to take that.
Plus, we're in the Rolling Hills neighborhood, you know, we've got lots of.
Yeah, so I think everybody ought to come in and say, where does that make sense? Where do they think the ridership would be if you could do it?
Right, definitely. Sure.
I don't know if you're familiar with the approach that Houston's taken for Reimagine Transit.
Yep.
It's a data-driven analysis
Yep.
of where people are and where they want to go. And so they straightened out a lot of the routes that they had. They were losing a lot of time going down all the cul-de-sacs and
Sure.
things like that. It's much more direct.
I can one better you on that, actually. Have you heard of Baltimore Link?
Baltimore Link?
Yeah, what they're doing in Baltimore?
Yeah,
That was
right.
my idea. So it's kind of like the same thing that Houston's doing. Theirs is built off of rail, ours is built off of the city link routes that kind of feed into downtown. There's a lot of similar concepts where you want to improve route directness.
Improvements in
Right,
service.
and my biggest thing as a service planner is increasing speed of the vehicles themselves and increasing safety. And when you have those two things, you can really have a system working optimally.
Well, even more radical for, you pointed out, all the sort of cul-de-sacs and things like, was on-demand request to pick up.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've written a white paper on flex routing. We promoted a couple of ideas in Arlington recently, flexible transit services where the density isn't quite high enough to support fixed route service.
BRT.
Well, it's kind of like Bridge, which is closing, but yeah, there's lots of ideas that you can really.
One of the things, the last 20 years, every time there have been budget cuts, they have cutbacks in local service in this area and sacrificed for yet more express services.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. They basically has promoted more sprawl development by providing
Right.
better bus service than people who live in the close-in communities. That's where we really suffered.
Right.
So for example, in the Four Corners area, we had a local bus service that would take us to the closest metro station, which was actually Forest Glen. So it's a 10-minute ride. Now that instead they take us to downtown Silver Spring, was a 25-minute bus ride. So who in the right mind wants 15 more minutes on the commute by bus than they used to by bus? And so they effectively killed a lot of the bus ridership by cutting back repeatedly on local service over the last 20 years. The other issue they've done is cut back on weekend service. So one of the issues for people is the WMATA Z6 route that stopped running on Saturdays. So people can't get to the businesses on Cherry Hill, Target, Kohl's, all those on the weekends. So people don't ride the bus because it's simply easier to have a car to even go do shopping like that to all those businesses. So, you know, basically the county has done everything it can to discourage a transit-oriented lifestyle in these close-in neighborhoods.
Well, I think right now the goal is that people who are using the service, or if you have not been on the Ride-On or the Metro service, you know, to take the time, you know, to look at these concepts, because what you're speaking to, James, is level of service enhancement. So these comments, we take them extremely seriously. Right. We developed a public involvement plan to integrate.
Here's the thing of trying to, what Houston did was more efficient use of existing resources, like straightening out routes, also seeing routes that effectively, they identified about 25% of their transit resources was being wasted on routes nobody was using.
So what I can tell you is so Josh is the one who is the originator of this Baltimore Link plan with the MTA. I ran the public involvement program for 4 years. So we did 3 drafts of the plan and then a final draft. We changed 56 out of the 70 route recommendations based on public feedback. And then in the second draft, we then changed 47 out of the 70 route recommendations based on feedback. Because people know what their experience is, and we can look at the data, and then when they review the recommendation, they can give us insights, just like what we did here today. So we're going to continue to go through this process of looking at the existing conditions report, which feeds in a lot of different metrics and a lot of different performance data. But the data that we want, especially because of your role on the CACs, is to engage communities to give us feedback beyond those who are sitting here, so we can really understand what riders are experiencing and those who desire to use the service to give us that feedback as well, and that's really why we do this process.
And I think
To
there's
speak
a
to-
more fundamental point
Yeah, I
here
can-
to what Jim was
Absolutely.
saying, is that in the Four Corners area for 20 years, we've been fighting to get better transit access and losing. And so you all need to know that if local service gets further sacrificed to the altar of BRT ambition, then the ridership is coming out with pitchforks and torches, because, you know, it's just been horrible what's been done. And so you need to have that in mind. So, you know, like your handout only said connections to the BRT service. You introduced it verbally, you said, or to local service. You know, just know this, that is in everybody's DNA, because we have neighborhood people standing at the street watching empty express buses go by, and they can't get on the bus because the local bus is full.
And I think that that's really helpful to understand that insight that both James that you're presenting and Caroline, because I think, you know, having the BRT service be an opportunity for us to talk more broadly about the network, that's what we're trying to do. So I think we got a little bit of clarity here in this discussion, and your points are really well taken.
Well, just wanted to say that I was on the county transit task force, 33 people. Of the 33, it was myself and one other person I know of who was actually an active, regular transit user. So I think one of the problems of the county's transit planning efforts, they effectively organize the actual, they effectively ignore transit users.
So let's get out of the past. We're moving towards
Well,
the
let
future.
me just answer a couple
And
more
let's touch
questions.
on
Just to get to your points, I agree with everything you said.
Right.
One of the things that we do on all of our planning efforts, and that really hasn't been publicized in Baltimore Link, but is really one of the differentiators for the whole plan, is that we develop realistic run times based on segment by segment, actual running times of the vehicles in transit during each period of the day. So we know exactly how long it takes to get, you know, the bus from one time point to another, which is, you know, much better than what many agencies do right now, which is the best guess based on, you know, one time a day using a transit vehicle, who knows if it's raining or sunny or what might be impacting it. And we plan on doing that here, so, and that, you know, that changes a lot. And as far as, you know, a successful BRT running on a corridor, you're exactly right. If you don't have a local service underneath it, local service is feeding it, it will die. You're only serving one part of the population, and oftentimes it's not the part of the population that needs it the most. So we're definitely here to make sure that local services don't suffer, and in fact we want to improve them. This is a great opportunity for us to not only get a new type of service out there that will improve the corridor overall, but really have a relook of what the local services are doing and how we can improve them holistically, so that we, you know, have a real transit service and system in this area that works cohesively together.
One thing, it sounds like I'm probably going to do this anyway, but let me just express it, is when you're doing all the, bringing the local buses into the BRT, and particularly a lot of buses just go down to Silver Spring and don't make any stops from Silver Spring or from White Oak South. When you're doing all this tabulation, figure out how much riders are actually on the BRT at different places would be handy. And I think you're going to, sounds like you're doing that anyway, but.
Yeah, we'll be doing it for the local side of things, but it will be done for the BRT as well.
Well, I mean, you just add it up.
Sure.
So many people come off this local bus, and we're assuming this number of people ride BRT south or north or whatever.
Absolutely.
Okay, so just to make, you know, thank you guys for staying a little bit later. Thank you so much, Josh, for these concepts are iterative. We're going to continue to build on everything we learned. The reason why we wanted to cover these 3 topics today is just to make sure that, you know, we're all talking with the same language. So next month, we're going to be working internally to analyze feedback, and we're going to be preparing for outreach events. We're going to be doing employee focus groups. If you have an interest in, if you're an employer and you'd like to work with us, you know, we have sign up on the website, but feel free to contact me. We're also going to be doing events in the summer where we're meeting people where they are and conducting a survey. So our next CAC meeting is going to be the week of July 10th, and that's going to be covering topics of transit signal priority, stormwater management, environmental, our environmental component of the planning process. And you know, feel free to stay and continue to talk to us, and we just really appreciate the time you took
So
tonight.
you've got White Oak Day on your calendar, which is,
Yes.
and you'll have Burtonsville Day,
On your calendar, okay. Just want to make sure you have those two.
Yeah, if you definitely have the White Oak one for
No, September 16th.
Let me check on that one, because the White Oak one's coming up soon.
White, the third.
I think we do.
Yeah, the third.
Sure.